Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. When I was dead broke, man, I couldn't picture this. 50-inch screen, money green leather sofa. Got 2 rides, a limousine with the chauffeur.
Hello there, I'm Parsons from Review My Games, and today I'm going to carry on my Resident Evil series reviews with Resident Evil Code Veronica X on the PS2.
Resident Evil Code Veronica X is a re-released version of Resident Evil Code Veronica, or Biohazard Code Veronica as it was known in Japan. Code Veronica was released for the Sega Dreamcast on February the 3rd, 2000 in Japan, February the 29th, 2000 in North America, and May the 26th, 2000 in the PAL region. It's the 4th game in Capcom's Resident Evil series and was the first Resident Evil game to be released for a non-Sony console before being ported to other consoles, whereas all the previous games have been released on the Sony PlayStation and then ported to other non-Sony consoles. Code Veronica was also the first Resident Evil game to be made for a 6th generation gaming console. For those of you who don't know what a 6th generation gaming console is, it's consoles that were available at the turn of the 21st century. It involves consoles such as the Sega Dreamcast, Sony PlayStation 2, Microsoft Xbox and the Nintendo GameCube. This generation started on November the 27th, 1998, when the Sega Dreamcast was released, and still hasn't finished yet as the PlayStation 2 is still in production and selling steadily. However, let's get back to the review before I diverge too far from it. Resident Evil Code Veronica was only released for the Sega Dreamcast, but an updated version called Resident Evil Code Veronica X, or Biohazard Code Veronica Complete Edition, as it was known in Japan, was released on March 22, 2001 in Japan for the Sega Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2. While the Dreamcast version never expanded beyond Japan, Code Veronica X was released in North America and the PAL region on the PlayStation 2 console on August 21, 2001 in North America and September 14, 2001 in the PAL region. It was later released for the GameCube on August 7, 2003 in Japan, December 3, 2003 in North America and March 12, 2004 in the PAL region. This updated version featured near identical gameplay, the only major difference being that if Claire is poisoned in the Nosferatu battle, they'll have to find her a serum. It also featured 9 minutes of additional cutscenes and mild graphical changes. Also, the character introduction captions at the bottom of the screen were removed. I'll be reviewing Resident Evil Code Veronica X for the PlayStation 2. The game begins with Claire Redfield, one of the main characters from Resident Evil 2, still searching for her brother Chris Redfield, one of the main characters from the first Resident Evil. She's infiltrated an Umbrella Corporation facility in Paris, but has been captured and imprisoned on Rockfort Island. The T-virus has been released on the island, so Rodrigo Raval lets Claire free, no longer seeing her as a threat, but he warns her that she has no chance of getting off the island. You then spend half the game as Claire trying to find a way off the island, teaming up with an inmate named Steve Burnside. As you progress through the game, Steve starts to become a love interest of Claire's. Why? Why the hell does she start to get feelings for that annoying douchebag? He spends most of the game just whining about how lonely he is, then whines about how he doesn't want to talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, then don't mention it in the first place. There's this annoying voice as well, squeakier than the average, which I reckon is just because he can't fit enough air through his windpipe because he probably has that stupid collar on too tight. He also has feelings for Claire, but rather than actually acting on this and forming a relationship, he thankfully just dies. Sorry if I ruined the story for you. Unfortunately though, his death doesn't come until the second half of the game, so you're forced to spend quite a while hating this guy. After the first half of the game, you play through the second half as Chris, who received word from Leon S. Kennedy, the other main character from Resident Evil 2, that Claire was on Rockford Island, so you've gone there to find Claire. I have mixed feelings about this game. I personally don't enjoy playing it, but there are good things about it. For example, Albert Wesker returns in this game, who's one of my favourite characters from the Resident Evil series. Also, I can enjoy the story behind the gameplay. However, I find the gameplay itself to be too boring. It features the exact same style of gameplay as previous games in the series, except for some minor differences, which was fair enough on the original PlayStation console, but this was on PlayStation 2, and as such, should have had more new features. The differences that did exist were, the dodge feature from Resident Evil 3 had been removed, continues were included when you died, if you picked up a herb while your inventory was full, you had the option to use the herb at that time, and this time you could dual wield certain weapons, allowing you to attack 2 enemies at once. A first-person view would have been welcome. Types of weapons, but not for normal weapons, like pistols or machine guns. The lack of updates to the gameplay meant that this game could be quite boring, and every time I played it, it was only for a short while, as I'd soon lose the will to play it. When a game series enters a new generation, it needs updates to the gameplay. You can't just have the same gameplay as the older generation games, but with nicer visuals. The visuals were obviously nicer than the early games, but for a PlayStation 2 game, they weren't the best. Granted, they were okay at the time that the game was released, but looking back on it now, age hasn't treated it well. Instead of using 3D characters on preset 2D backgrounds like the previous games had done, this game used full 3D environments. However, it still used a fixed camera style, which was good because it kept the game's cinematic feel. Overall, I didn't much care for this game as a game. I did like the story, however, as it brought Wesker back to the storyline and it brought Chris Redfield back too, and it was almost worth suffering Steve Burnside's pathetic whining just to see him get killed off. However, I didn't enjoy playing this game that much as I found the gameplay to be quite boring, and with no major updates to the gameplay from the previous generation of Resident Evil games. I'm not saying it was a bad game. I know people that like this game and I know people that didn't like this game. In my opinion, it worked as part of the Resident Evil series, keeping the cinematic feel and horror that the series was famous for. And if it was the only Resident Evil game I could ever play, then I would. But I did find it boring at times and would have preferred to see it as a movie rather than play it as a game, like what they did with Resident Evil Degeneration.
So, there were good points and bad points about this game. It was by no means a bad game. I could play it if I had to, but it wasn't a particularly good game either. It played too much like the other Resident Evil games did on the PlayStation 1, and this made it very boring. In my opinion, it rounded off as a fairly average game, and so I'm only going to give it a 2-star rating. Although I did like the fact they brought back Wesker and Chris Redfield, but this still wasn't enough to give it an extra star. That's my opinion of Resident Evil Code Veronica X, and I hope you enjoy this review. And yes, I have grown a beard during this video.
As with all of our videos, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this video and others on my site, along with some written reviews as well. So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to look at it, which you do. So do it. Now.